Hi guys, and welcome to my new garage shop space. Today's project is building this welding table / workbench out of 5/16" steel plate and some scrap steel I had kicking around. I got the steel plate from the remnants at my local steel yard for 50 bucks. Being on a budget, I always take a look in the remnant section.
This piece of plate isn't cut square, so I got a good deal. And it doesn't really need to be square for this project. It's 8 feet long, and the width is 32 inches at one end and 30 3/4 inches at the other. This will be our tabletop, but I'm going to build the table upside down and then flip it over, because the plate is really freaking heavy, and because it'll be much easier to weld the frame to the tabletop when it is upside down. Okay, so starting with the frame, the goal is a very simple frame. Even though the steel plate that is our tabletop isn't square, my frame will be, and I'll just leave a little extra overhang on the wide end at the back of the table. The pieces you see in red in the plan are all this funky C-channel stuff that was part of a storage rack. It's 1.5 by 1.5 inches with 12 gauge walls. The pieces shown in yellow are 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch rectangular steel tubing with 18 gauge walls. They were part of a bed frame I got for free. If you're willing to be a little creative, Facebook Marketplace can be a good source of materials for a budget DIY project. First, I'm cutting my pieces of steel to length with a chop saw. Then I'm removing the paint or galvanized coating with an angle grinder everywhere I plan to weld. With the steel prepped, I'm ready to start welding. I'm using a 205 DS Pro multi-process welder from YESWELDER. I just got this as part of my new shop setup, so this project is also going to be a trial run for this machine. I have the machine set up to MIG weld, which is the process I'm most familiar with, and I'm going to start by building the front and back portions of the frame, which are essentially just two rectangles. Since I don't have a work table yet, I raised the steel plate on a few 2x4s so I could use it as a work surface and clamp the frame in place nice and square. I tack welded the pieces together and rechecked my measurements before I finished welding all the seams. Once again, I used the steel plate as a work surface to clamp the pieces in place, and used a ratchet strap to keep the legs square with the lateral supports. Once the frame was stacked together, I moved it around in different directions so I could access all the joints to weld them easily. With the frame done, I put it in position on the steel plate and traced around it with a marker along the inside and outside edges, so I knew exactly where I wanted to clean the plate to get it ready to weld. I used an angle grinder and followed my lines to clean the mill scale off the steel plate where I needed to, but not more than necessary, since I don't plan on painting the table and the mill scale helps prevent rust. Finally, it was time to attach the frame to the tabletop. I clamped it in place and went around the entire frame, welding approximately 6-inch long sections with 4-inch gaps along each seam on the inside and outside of the frame. To prevent rust, I coated all of the welds in bare steel and used motor oil on the steel plate and the frame. Used motor oil might not be the best product for this, but it's free and I always have more on hand whenever I need to reapply it. At this point, I flipped the table over. It sat nice and flat and felt sturdy, but when I smacked it with a hammer, I could tell it had a little more give than I wanted. You can really tell with a couple of bolts sitting on the table, rattling with each strike. So back to the scrap pile. I found a piece of C-channel to add another support, running the length of the frame along the center of the table. I flipped the table back over and cleaned up the steel. I decided to try attaching this piece with stick welding just for curiosity's sake. I switched the machine over from MIG to stick, which took about 30 seconds, and proceeded to make an absolute mess. I hadn't used a stick welder in about 20 years, and I was bad at it then, but I stuck with it, and after 14 feet of seam, I was feeling a little bit better about my chances of becoming proficient in this skill.
In the end, I got some good practice in with my new welder and a nice big table for my new shop for less than 100 bucks. So I'm pretty happy with how this project turned out. If you're a beginner welder like myself, this is a great project to take on to practice your welding and fabrication skills. And if you're trying to set up your own shop with some welding gear, take a look at the links below for 10% off of YESWELDER.com. I've had this auto dim helmet from YESWELDER for years that I'm still quite happy with. And so far I'm impressed with the ease of use and versatility of the MIG 205 DS Pro. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.